Hey guys, how you going? In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to create an instant search bar using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Okay, so this solution is going to be done through vanilla JS, which means there's going to be no need for any sort of external library, any external framework. It's going to be pure JS, and it's also going to work on desktop and mobile devices. It's going to be responsive, and it's also going to be highly customizable and easy to use from the developer's perspective, which means you can easily go inside here and make changes to extend the functionality of the instant search bar. So let's take a look at the finished product right here in this tab. As we can see, we've got this instant search bar to search for users against a database. So for example, if I was to type in Dom, it's going to show me a list of users with the name Dom, and these are also going to be links, which means I can go inside here and actually click on one of the users and it's going to take me to the external page. So unfortunately, I've got this issue with my screen recorder, and that is why the links aren't working. It appears that if I zoom out, zoom back in, try again, they do work. So I might just keep trying here until it does work, but trust me, I have tested this and it only happens when I'm recording the screen. So there we go, it just worked just then. So just keep that in mind. It does work, or it should work for you, but that is the final product, okay? And we've also got here, as you just saw, we've got this sort of loading bar indicator on the top there of the search bar. That's also easily done using CSS, okay? So let's take a look here at this tab right here. So we're going to be starting from scratch inside here, okay? And I'm going to be showing you here first up just the file structure of what I currently have. So as we can see right here, I've got this index.html file inside that directory there, and it's got nothing inside of it, okay? And I've also got this search.php, and this endpoint right here is going to be what's doing the searching, okay? So I'm not going to be going into how to actually perform the search, because every person watching this is going to be using their own or a different server-side technology. You know, some people might be using Node.js or Python or whatever, so the PHP isn't too relevant, but basically it just performs an SQL query on the query string that we pass in, and it returns a list of results. Now I am going to show you the Heidi SQL window here that I've got open. So as we can see, that is what the table looks like. We've got a first name, last name and occupation. Okay, so it's going to do a search against that table there, and the result of that search is going to look something like this. So I'll just duplicate this tab here and then go to search.php with a Q in the query string equal to Dom, press enter, and we get this JSON response. So as we can see, the JSON response looks like this. Now, your own search script does not need to return the data in this format, okay? So just keep that in mind, because it is highly customizable. Essentially inside here we've got a few properties and of course an array of results. Okay, so that is the search endpoint response format. Okay, so anyway, now let's begin on the HTML for the instant search bar. Okay, so inside the index.html file, the first thing to do is to make a new directory here for the instant search. So we can call this directory instant-search, okay? And then inside here, we can make a directory for CSS and a directory for JavaScript, so JS, okay? Now we're also going to be heading to the Material Icons website, because we want to be able to show a little magnifying glass here in the search bar. So we can use this icon library right here. So it's Google Material Icons. They're free to use and I believe open source. You can include this library on your page by going to this URL, and I'll leave all this stuff in the description below. But basically, go down here, click the icon fonts for web, and then copy and paste this link right here into the HTML head of your page, just like that. And now you can use the Google Material Icons. Okay, so now let's move on to the actual HTML of the instant search bar itself. Okay, so the very first thing to do here is to create a div which is going to be the main container for the search bar. Okay, so we can make this div and give it a class of instant-search. Okay, and then inside here it's going to be holding two things. The first one is going to be a container for the input. So basically it's going to contain the input and also the magnifying glass icon. So we can call this div an instant-search __ input-container. So as usual, I'm using the block element modifier CSS class naming convention, but you can of course name these classes whatever you like. Okay, now I did forget to add an ID to the main div, so we can say ID and we can just say search users. Okay, cool. Now inside the input container, we're going to be putting two things, the actual input field and then the icon. So for the input field, we can say input, okay, with a type of text and also a class. And this class is going to be instant-search __ input. Okay. It's also going to have a few more properties here, or attributes, sorry. First one is going to be spell check equal to false, and that's going to remove the default spell checking in the browser when typing in that box. And also a placeholder, and the placeholder text is going to be something like search users. Okay, and that is the search bar. If I save this and refresh this page, we can see we get something like this. Okay, let's add in the icon, and the way we're going to be using Google Material Icons here is by making a new I-tag with a class of material-icons and also a class of instant-search __ icon. Okay, and inside here we can just say search as the text, and that right there is going to show you the little magnifying glass as the icon. Let's save this and refresh, and we get this right here. And essentially, if you want to know how I did that, on this icons page right here, if I scroll down, there's a bunch of icons here. If I do a search for search, we can see right there we get this search icon, and basically that is how you choose and use the search icon. Okay, so anyway, let's go back inside here and move on. So now we're going to be adding the HTML for the list of search results. So the container div for each search result is going to be called instant-search __ results container. Okay, and then inside here we're going to be putting a couple of results. Okay, so we can say div with a class of instant-search __ results. And inside the results, this is actually going to be an anchor tag because of course they're going to be links. Okay, so we can make that an A right there, and also give this an href of, just for now, a hash. Okay, cool. Then inside here, we're going to be placing both the title, so basically just the person's name, and also a paragraph to describe their occupation. So we can say right here div with a class of instant-search __ title, and inside here we can just say, for example, first name. Okay, and for the or let's just do first and last name. Okay, we can also say down here a paragraph tag with a class of instant-search __ paragraph. Okay, inside here we can just put some lorem ipsum or some dummy text. Okay, cool. And that is basically the HTML structure for our instant search bar. So I do want to point out early on that everything basically right here, the results container, all of this stuff is going to be generated dynamically through the JavaScript. However, we are going to be putting the HTML markup inside here just for now, so we can actually style it using CSS. So I'm going to make a copy of that search result right there, so we have two results to work with. So now saving this and refreshing gives us something like this. Okay, so now we are ready to move on to the CSS for the instant search bar. So inside the CSS directory, let's make a new file called instant-search.css. Okay, we can of course then just include that CSS file just up here. So link for CSS at instant search CSS instant search.css. Okay, And inside the CSS file, the very first thing to do here is going to be to target the main instance search container. So basically this one right here. So we're going to be targeting the instant-search class, and firstly we're going to be adding a position of relative and a maximum width of 250 px. So the reason for this position relative is to allow us to place the loading indicator absolutely at the top of the instant search bar, but we're going to get into that a bit later on. And the maximum width here is so that we have a maximum width. That means it's going to try to be 250 px. If it can't, it's going to shrink down, which makes it responsive. Okay. The second thing here is to set the font family of the whole search bar. So we can say instant search, and everything inside the instant search, actually my mistake, we're going to be targeting the instant search and also the instant search input field. Okay, and we can say font family, let's make this sans serif just for now, but of course you can change this to be whatever font you like. Okay, we're also going to be targeting here instant search and also everything inside instant search, so we can just put an asterisk right there. And for this one we're going to be saying transition and then background at 0.15 seconds, and also a box shadow at 0.15 seconds. And the reason why I'm applying this to every element inside is because many of the elements are going to have these two transitions, so it's easier to apply it like this, and I don't see any performance issues with doing it to everything. Okay. And we're now gonna just move on to styling up the input container. So I might just save this and refresh the page to see what we currently have, and we have this right here. As we can see, we've got the maximum width that is kicking in. Okay, so now let's go back inside here and work on the input container. So we can say here instant search and also instant search input container. Okay, and for both the main container and the input container, we're going to be saying a border radius of 5 px. Okay, and the reason why I've set it here, the reason why I've set it against the input container and also the main container, that is because if we were to just do something like this, for example, to the main container and then use overflow hidden, we're not going to be able to see the search results. So that is why it's important to set it against both the input and the main container. Okay. So moving on to a rule set for just the input container. For this one, we're going to start off and say display as inline flex, and the reason for the flex box here is that way we can have the input on the left side and the icon on the right side, because remember, this input container is going to contain both the icon and the input field itself. Okay. We can also say box sizing and border box to include the padding in the overall width of the actual container. We can also say here width at 100%. Okay. We can also say padding and make this 6 px and a background of light grey. Okay. Essentially with this background of light grey, the reason why we're putting it on the input container, I can just show you real quickly. If I refresh the page, we get this right here. So we're going to be making the background of the input field itself, so this one right here, we're going to be making this transparent. That way the input container gets the actual decision on the background. Okay. So now we can just go in, inside here now, and we can target the input container once again, and we can say focus within. So basically we're saying whenever the actual input field gets focus, we're going to apply some styles to the input container. So we're going to be saying here background and set this to white. That way if I refresh the page and then go and focus within the input container, we can see the background goes to, of course, the white there. Okay. Cool. So we can move on here, and we can actually, you know what, I did forget to add a rule set, and that is for that is for the instance search. So let's go back up here real quickly, and we're going to say instance search, and we're going to say focus dash within. So we're saying essentially whenever, once again, the actual input field gets focused, we're going to be applying these styles. So we're going to say box shadow, and we're going to say box shadow and say 0, 0, 3px, and then RGBA 0, 0, 0, and then 0.3 or 0.2. Okay, so now save this and refresh, focus on the input field, and we get the border radius, sorry, the box shadow applying right there along the whole of the container. Okay, let's move on now to applying some styles to the actual input field itself. So for this one, we can target instance search input, okay, and we can firstly say flex grow and set this to be 1. That way it takes up the remaining width of the flex box. Okay, we can say border, set this to be none, an outline of none, a width of 100%, okay, and some padding of 0 top and bottom, and 6px left and right, the same value which are used up here for the input container. Okay, we can also say background, and of course make this transparent, that way it goes through into the input container background. Okay, let's save this and refresh, and we have this right here. Okay, so now it might be a good time to work on the loading indicator up the top. Okay, so for that, we're going to be using CSS pseudo elements. However, we're going to be applying that only when the instance search up here gets a added class. Okay, so we can say here instance search dash dash loading. Okay, so for this one, essentially the JavaScript, whenever we're searching, it's going to be adding this class to the input field, sorry, the main container, this div right here. So if that's the case, we're going to want to show a loading indicator. So let's go back inside the CSS up to the instance search section, okay, and we're going to say this right here. We're going to say instance search dash dash loading, okay. And for this, we're going to be using CSS pseudo elements. So we're going to say colon colon after, just like this. And if you're not too sure what these are, essentially we're creating a virtual element using CSS. Okay, we're going to be giving a content of an empty string. Okay, a position of absolute, and this works in conjunction with our position relative up here. And we can also say top at 0, 0, okay, a left of 0, a height of 2px, and a background of, I'm going to be using the dcode green color here, so it's going to be 0095 and then 78. Okay, we're also going to give this a border radius of 5px, and lastly, temporarily, a width of 50%. Okay, so now let's save this right here and refresh the page, and we get something like this. So as we can see, of course, we've got the loading indicator. Now we're going to be applying a CSS animation to basically make it go back and forth. So to achieve that, let's remove this default width and then go down here and make a new keyframes. Okay, I'm going to call this keyframes search indicator. Okay, inside here we can just say for 0%, we can say width at 15%. So basically, at the very start of the animation, it's going to have a 15% width. Okay, we can say at halfway, so 50%, we can say width, and we're going to make this 100%. Okay, and for the whole animation, once it's complete, it's going to be at a width back down to 15%. Okay, to apply this animation, we can go back up here and we can say animation, and we can say search indicator at 0.5 seconds, and then infinite, and then ease in and then out. That way, with the infinite, it's going to continue happening for as long as it needs to, and it's going to take half a second to complete. So now saving this and refreshing gives us something like this. Okay, so we can just go back inside the HTML now and then remove that class. Of course, we can use it a bit later on. So now let's go back inside the CSS and continue with the results. So for the results container, of course, the div holding the results, we can target that class. So we can say instance search __ results dash container, and for this one, we can give it a maximum height of 250 px. That way, it doesn't take up too much of the vertical space on the page. Okay. We can also say overflow of y set to auto to produce a scroll bar, a visibility of hidden, and an opacity of 0. Now these two properties here are going to be the default on when the page loads up. But for now, just to see what we're actually going to be doing, we're going to make these two properties essentially just cancelled out or commented out, of course, just for now. Okay. We can also say transition. Set this to be visibility at 0. If I can spell this correctly, so visibility at 0.1 seconds, and also opacity at 0.1 seconds. That way, when the results container toggles between showing and hiding, it's going to have a nice fade in and fade out. Okay. Speaking of that, let's make a new class or modify a class for the actual showing or hiding of the results container. So we can just target the results container element just like this. Then we can say dash dash and then visible. So for this class, when it's visible, we can say visibility, set it to visible, and also an opacity, and set it back to 1. So we can see how these two properties here, or these two sets of properties, are going to sort of switch between to hide and show the results container. Okay, so now let's just save this and refresh the page, and we get something like this. Okay, so now I'm going to go back inside here, and we can move on to doing each individual result. So of course, this anchor tag right here. Okay, so let's just copy this class, make it a bit easier. Go down here, and for the search result, we're going to be saying firstly display as a block. That way we can convert it from the default inline display on the anchor tags. Okay, we can say color and set this to be just a dark gray. A text decoration of none to remove the default underline which appears on the actual on the anchor tags themselves. Okay, a padding of 10 px. A font size of 0.8 em, so a bit smaller than the current font size, and also a cursor of pointer to of course indicate that it is actually a link. So now saving this and refreshing gives us something like this. Okay, let's move on to adding a hover state for the instance search result. So we can just say :hover, and for this one we can just say background and set this to be a very light gray. Okay, we can also say right here instance search result, and we're going to be targeting essentially every result that is not the last result. So we're going to say not and then last of type. Okay, and for this we're going to say border bottom and set this to be 1 px and then solid and then that light gray used up here. So now saving this and refreshing, we can see first off we've got that underline or that border between the two results. Okay, we've also got here a hover state, and we can see that the transition is working, which we added at the very start. Okay, so a few more properties left here, or a few more rule sets left here for the CSS. We can target the instance search title class, and for this we're just going to say simply font size set to 1.1 em, and also a font weight of bold. Okay, and let's make a copy of this. Go down and just say paragraph. For the paragraph, we're going to be saying a line height of 1.5 and also a margin. And the margin is going to be something like 8 px top and bottom and 0 for left and right. Of course, this is totally up to you on how you want your text to be displayed. Let's save this and refresh, and we get something like this. Okay, so if you are happy with the way this looks, we are basically done with the CSS. However, just remember to go back inside here and uncomment out these two lines. Let's save this now and refresh once again. And we can see, of course, by default, the results are hidden. If I was to go inside the inspector here, go to the results container, okay, and just add the visible modifier class just like this. Press enter, we can see they now get displayed. So that is basically what the JavaScript is going to be doing. So now we are ready for the JavaScript for the instant search bar. Okay, so for the JavaScript of the instant search bar, we're going to firstly just go inside the JS directory here and make a new file, for instant search. Okay, and this right here is going to be in Pascal case. As we can see, I've used an uppercase I and an uppercase S, and that is because this right here is going to be a class. Okay, so we're going to be using ES6 import export syntax. Okay, so if you're not too sure what that is, don't worry. It's actually quite straightforward, more than you may think. Okay, but anyway, let's leave this for now and make a new file inside here now called instant-search.js. Okay, so this one's slightly different. This one is going to be basically your main file where your instant search are going to be sort of initialized and created and sort of configured. Okay, so essentially this file here is going to be including the instant search class, which we'll be creating very shortly, and then of course just creating those instances inside here to configure them. Okay, so let's go inside the index HTML and down below the body, or just before the end of the body, we can add a new script tag, and this script source is going to be for that second file we just created. So it's going to be going to instant search and then JS and then instant-search.js. It's also very important we add a type here. So we're going to say type and set this to be module. Okay, just like that. So now essentially we are ready to go for the JavaScript. Okay, so firstly I want to go inside the instant search file, okay, and I want to get a reference to our div right here. Okay, so we can just say right here const search users is equal to document.query selector and pass through here the ID of search users just like that. So now of course search users refers to this one right here. Okay, so now let's go inside the instant search JS class, and the first thing to do here is to of course define that class. So we can say class and then instant search just like that. Okay, and then down here we're going to be saying export defaults and then instant search, and basically this is just saying that we want to be able to export this class from this file. That way this file can then import what we exported. Okay, so up here we can say import, then say instant search from, and then we can just say right here instant-search.js. So now if I hover over this keyword here, we can see we get instant search, and we also get here class instant search, meaning everything's worked okay. Okay, so now down here, like I said earlier, we're going to be creating a new instance of the instant search class to make this work. So let's make a new constant here called instant search users. Okay, this will be equal to a new instance of our instant search class, and for now I'm gonna leave that empty. We're gonna be coming back inside here and giving this constructor some arguments, but for now let's keep it empty. Let's instead head inside the instant search class and begin defining a few methods here to of course make the instant search work. So the very first thing to do here is I'm going to be essentially just adding definitions for each one of our methods. Okay, so the first one here is going to be the constructor, and the constructor is going to take in the instant search element. So we can put inside here instant search. Okay, and the second argument or second parameter here is going to be the options. Okay, so we can say options right there, and when I say options, I'm referring to essentially we're going to be able to pass through a bunch of options, I guess, or configuration settings. So that includes things like the URL to search for. In our case right here, it's going to be search.php. We're also going to be passing through the actual query parameter. So in our case, the letter Q. And we're also going to be passing through two functions, okay? And the first function there is going to basically take the response data from the search and then transform it into a form which the instance search class is going to be able to work with. And the second function is going to let you define how the search results are going to look inside the HTML. So it sounds a bit complicated, however, trust me, it is not too bad once we get started. But for now, let's leave the constructor empty and then go down here and define a couple more methods. So we can say here, add listeners, and this one's going to be responsible for adding a few event listeners to our input and things like that. And we might also just go down here and add one more just for now, and there's going to be populate results, okay? And populate results is going to take through an array of results. Just like that. Okay, so and essentially, just for now, sorry, I'm getting a bit quick here, but the results here is an array of results, and essentially that right there refers to our results from the response. So search.php and our array of results right there. Okay, so for now, let's go inside here and say console.log. Here are your results. Okay, and we can just say console.log and output those results just for now. Okay, so now we have the options set up. So we have the constructor, we have add listeners, and we have populate results. Before I get into the constructor, I do want to create a JSON type definition for the options parameter. Okay, so let's go up here, and basically this is going to allow us to take advantage of type hinting in VS Code or whatever text editor you're using. Assuming it supports JSDoc, we're going to be able to see exactly which types of data is going to be supported and the properties for the options object. Okay, so let's go down here or up here and type out here at type def. And we're going to say right here object inside curly braces to indicate this is going to be an object. And for the name of this type definition, we can just say instant search options. Okay, just like that. Just keep in mind that essentially, if you go back inside this instant search.js file, I might just pass through here. We might as well, since we're inside here, we'll just pass through search users as the element, okay? And essentially this right here, this options, this is what we are defining right now. Basically, what should go inside this object, okay? So let's go back inside here and continue the JS doc. So here, we're gonna say as a first property, we're going to set the data type to be URL, and that is the built-in URL object within JavaScript, and the URL is going to have a property name of search URL, and this is going to be the URL which we, the URL which the search will be performed at. Okay, you know what? I'll just copy and paste my previous comments here. And we have something like that. So basically, yeah, the URL which the search bar will query to retrieve the results. Okay, I might just copy and paste my existing 3 properties here. So we're gonna have a property of string, and that is gonna be the query param. So basically, in our case, simply just Q. Okay. Our 2 functions, our response parser and our template function. So I'll get into these 2 a bit later on, but basically, like I said, the response parser takes the response and transforms it, and the template function allows you to define the HTML for your results. Okay, and that is all for the type definition of the instance search options, which means we can go back inside the instance search file here and then start using the objects. So we can say, for example, search URL you know what, my mistake, I forgot to mention that we need to also go back inside the constructor and add some documentation for the constructor itself. Okay, so inside here for the first parameter, we're going to be saying that it's going to be for the instance search an HTML element as the type, and for the description here we can just say the container element for the instance search. Okay, and for the options, of course, we can make use of that type definition. We can say instance search options, and the description, a list of options for configuration. So something straightforward like that. Okay, and for the function description, we can just say something like initializes the instance search bar, retrieves and creates elements. Okay, so we'll get into this a bit later on, but for now let's leave it the way it is and then go back inside the instant-search.js file, and now we can make use of this type definition. So back inside here we can say search URL. As we can see, VS Code is picked up on the JS doc and it is telling us we have the search URL parameter, and the type is going to be a URL right there. So now let's make a new instance of a URL like the property expects it to be, and we're going to be putting inside here, in my case I'm going to be putting in, might just look at my reference document right here. So I'm going to be putting in here projects and then instant-search and then search.php. So basically my endpoint for the search PHP file. Of course, in your case, it's going to look slightly different, but I'm also going to be making use of the base parameter here. And I'm going to be saying window.location.origin. So essentially, you can create this URL object however you like. You might even want to do something like this, where you say HTTP localhost, and then you do your path to your search. Okay, but essentially, you need to make a URL instance for this to work. I've also got a video on the URL object if you wish to check it out before continuing. But I do want to show you real quickly here the results of this object. So let's go inside the browser. I'll copy that and paste it inside the console. Press enter, and we can see right there the href property of this URL object is set to the search.php. Okay, cool. So let's go back inside here now and provide the second property, and that is going to be query param. In our case, it's going to be simply q. Okay, and for the template function, let's make this for now an empty arrow function and do the exact same thing for the results parser. Okay, like I said, we'll get back into these two functions a bit later on, but now essentially we've provided our options for the instant search, and like I said at the very start of this video, it's going to be highly customizable, which means if you have many different endpoints for searching with different kinds of response data, different endpoints, different query parameters, hopefully these properties right here are going to allow you to make it work in most scenarios. Okay, just change these as you see fit. Okay, cool. So now let's head back inside the instant-search.js and work with these two parameters inside the constructor. So firstly, we can say this.elements is equal to a new object. So we're going to be essentially just keeping a reference to a bunch of elements which we're going to be using for the instant search bar. The first one here is going to be called main, and this will refer to the instant search main element which we pass in. Okay. The second one here is going to be called input, and this one of course is going to refer to the actual input field itself. So we can say instant-search.query selector. We're going to be searching for the class of instant-search__input. Okay, and for the third one here, this will be results container, and this one is going to be dynamically generated as I mentioned earlier. So we're going to say document.createElement and pass through here the tag of div. Okay, which means we can now go back inside the index.html and just comment out our results container. Okay, just like that. So now, to finish off the constructor, we need to actually save the option. So we can say this.options is equal to options, just like that. Okay, and just below here, we are also going to say, if I can find it here, we're going to be adding a class to the actual results container to, of course, give it this class right here. So we're going to say this.elements.results-container.class-list.add, and we're going to say here instant-search__results container. Okay, and we can also say this.elements.main.append child and just append the results container. That way, essentially, we have this structure right here with the results container as the child element of the main one. Okay, cool. And also lastly, we need to say this.addListeners to, of course, call the addListeners function to actually get everything working. Okay, so now saving this right here, I might actually just go inside the instance search.js and say console.log instance search users just to see what our class looks like, or our object looks like. Okay, so now saving this and then refreshing the browser right here, we can see this is our object in its current form. In the elements property, we have the input, which is actually null, which means I made a mistake somewhere, but the results container right here is working perfectly fine. We can see inside the HTML, just down here somewhere, where is it? There it is. The instance search results container has been successfully appended to the instance search main element. Okay, so let's go and actually fix this input for null. Okay, let's figure out why. So of course I forgot the dot for the class name. Let's try again, save this and refresh, and now we have the input right there and it's working perfectly fine. And for the options, we can see we have, of course, our search URL working perfectly fine, and we have our query parameter also Q working perfectly fine. So let's move on to the main part of this video, and that is going to be, of course, the actual instance searching itself. So for the addListeners method, the first thing to do is to add a listener for when the user types some characters inside the input field. Okay, so we can say this.elements.input.addEventListener. We're going to listen for the input event, and basically this event is going to fire off whenever they start typing on the keyboard. Okay, so we're going to run this function inside here, and we're going to be saying, essentially, first up, const query is equal to this.elements.input.value. Okay, so the value property here essentially just refers to the text in the input field. Okay, and then we can go down here and we can say, for example, console.log query. So just for now, let's save this and refresh the page and see what actually happens. Okay, if I was to start typing inside here, we can see in the console we get our characters, each character we type. So the issue with this is the instance search search PHP file is going to be queried every single time we type a character, so there is no actual delay, which means it's going to get absolutely pumped. So to fix that problem, we're going to add a half-second delay to give the user more time to actually finish what they're typing before firing off the request. So to achieve this, let's go back inside here, add a new variable here called delay equal to nothing just for now. And then, and then down here, we can say delay is equal to set timeout and pass through here this function, and this function just for now is going to say console.log query. Okay, and then just below here, we're going to say 500. Okay, so basically this code right here is going to only run after half a second has passed. Okay, now we also need to say up here clear timeout for delay, because of course delay right here, when we assign this to be set timeout, this stores a reference to the actual timeout itself. So when we say clear timeout on each input, we are cancelling out the previous attempted search, which gives us the delay. So now saving this and refreshing, we should now only see characters appearing when I wait about half a second. If I type in Dom really quickly, we can see it only works after the half second, which means the search is going to work a lot more smoothly. Okay, beautiful. So now let's go back inside here and finish off this function properly. So essentially, inside the set timeout, we're going to firstly say if the query.length is less than 3 characters long. So basically, if you typed in 1 or 2 characters, so a minimum of 3, we're going to say right here, this.populate results and pass through an empty array of results. And that way, of course, the actual search results is going to show nothing if you type in less than 3 characters. Okay, we're going to also say return nothing. Then down here, if we did actually have a nice long query to actually perform the search for, then we can say this.perform search. Okay, perform search and pass through here query. So obviously we are yet to create this perform search method. We're going to do that right now, but basically it's going to return us a response, a promise containing our results. Okay, so we're going to say .then inside here we're going to have access to our results. Okay, once we have our list or array of results, we can then just say this.populate results once again, but this time actually populate with some real results, just like that. Okay, now I do want to just remove this line just to save this and refresh and test out the initial less than 3 characters thing. So let's go inside here, type in DO, and we see right there, here are your results with an empty array. So now let's implement the perform search method to actually perform the search. So let's go down here, okay, and we can say perform search. Okay, let's take in our query as our string. So of course this right here is going to be the characters which the user types in. Now I did forget to add documentation to these methods, so I might just copy and paste some JS doc I previously wrote. So for the add listeners, we can just copy and paste this right here. So add listeners for elements, populate results. I can just say this right here. So basically makes the request, actually that is for the perform search, my mistake. So makes the request of the search URL and retrieves the results, returns a promise array of objects. Okay, for the populate results, however, this one is going to be updating the HTML to display each result under the search bar. Okay, cool. So inside the perform search, let's continue with the request. So we're going to be making use of fetch API to make the request to the server. So firstly, we're going to be constructing the URL to actually search. So obviously we are passing through here a URL object. However, it does not contain the actual query string part. So let's go back inside here, make a new constant called URL. Equal to a new instance of URL, and we're going to be passing through here this.options.search URL and then .toString. So basically we are creating a copy of what we passed through here, and then we're going to be saying URL.searchParams.set. We're going to be setting essentially a key value pair, our Q equal to our value. So we're going to be saying here this.options.queryParam. Okay, for the value we're going to be saying query, just like that. Okay, and then I might just go down here and say console.log URL.toString. Okay, let's save this here, refresh the page and perform a search. So DOM, for example, we can see right here, this is our constructed URL, just like that. If I was to go to this URL, we can see it's working perfectly fine. So that is our constructed URL. We can now actually make the fetch request, but first we need to say down here this.setLoading equal to true. So essentially we want the search bar to have the loading indicator at the start of the search. So let's go ahead now and actually create this method. So we can say set loading, it'll take through our boolean value, true or false, and for the documentation we can simply just say right here, shows or hides the loading indicator for the search bar. Of course right here, true for the showing of the indicator and false to hide it. For this, like I said previously, I'm making use of the instance search loading class, so we can just copy this and paste it inside here when we say this.elements.main.class.list.toggle and pass through here our class name, and then for the second argument here for the force parameter we can just say b right there, and now it's going to add this class if we want to show it and hide it to of course hide the search indicator. So now saving this and then refreshing, typing out DOM, we can see right there we have the search indicator working perfectly fine. Okay, let's go back inside here now and actually perform the fetch request. So we're going to be returning the results of the fetch request, so we can say return right here, then we can say fetch at the URL in which we constructed. For the fetch options, we're going to be passing through here method and make this get. Now, if you are using sessions, you may need to say credentials and set this to be either include or same origin. Just keep that in mind. For me, it is not required. Okay, and now once the response comes back, we can just say .then, and we have the response object right inside there. So the response right here, of course, is going to be, the response body is going to be in a JSON format, which means I can say return response.json. Okay, just like that. And then I can say .then, and now I've got the response data. So of course, our response data right here is going to be a native JavaScript object of what we returned from this PHP file. So we're going to say right here console.log response data and see what results we get. Let's save this and refresh the page, do a search for DOM, and we get right here in the console our JavaScript object of the results. If we go inside the network tab, we can see, of course, our request went through perfectly fine. We sent through the queue as the parameter, of course the value of DOM, and it's all working perfectly fine. Okay, let's move on now to doing a tiny bit of error handling for the endpoint. Okay, so for example, in my search.php, as we can see here, if I don't provide a queue parameter, then essentially I get a response code of 400. Okay, so let's handle that scenario if it does happen to occur. So we can say inside here, in the then for the response, we can say if response.status does not equal 200, then we can just say throw new error and say something went wrong with the search. So of course, every person here is going to have a different way of handling this error. In my case, I'm just going to go down here and I'm going to say essentially .catch, and right here I'm going to have access to the error object just like that, and I'm going to be saying console.error and then pass through here the actual error. So of course, like I said, in your own scenario, you may instead want to actually, show the user a message or do something like that. In my case, I'll keep it simple and just say console.error. Okay, I'm also going to say here, very important, to say return an empty array. So basically, now we are going to be adding something else here very shortly, but for now, we're going to say return empty array to basically say if there was an error, return no results. Okay. And then down here, we can say .finally, Okay, and here we can just say, once we have the results, now of course our results here are either going to be an array of result objects or an empty array if it was an error, okay, or no results. Finally, we're going to say this.setLoading and reset the loading back to false to of course hide the indicator up top, and we're also going to say here return results. That way our perform search here gives us the results here, in which we can then say populate results to of course make them display. Okay, so I might just save this here and refresh the browser real quickly to see how we go. I'll type in DOM and we get this right here. Here are your results, and we actually get undefined. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why we get that. Let's go back inside here and check it out. Okay, so here we go. So I didn't actually return the response data. So of course I've actually logged it out here, but there's nothing to return. So let's go down here now and actually return each one of our result objects. Okay, so to do this, we're going to be making use of the response parser, which we supplied inside the constructor here. So once again, the reason for this response parser is because every endpoint might be different. Of course, in this case here, for our search.php, it returns us in this format, which means we can just say, once we have this response data, we can make use of the results property to of course give us the array of results. Okay, so that being said, let's go back inside here, and in the response parser, this right here is going to accept a response data parameter. Okay, then here we can just say return response.data.results. Okay, because once again, the person writing this knows that this search PHP gives us this particular format, which means we can say return response data.results, just like that. Okay, now you may also want to do a bit of transformation here if you wish to make it work fine for you, but basically all the instance search class needs is an array of response objects or results objects. Okay, so now with this defined here, we can go back inside here now, and we can say inside the response data section, we can say return this.options.response parser and pass through here our response data just like that. So now it's going to run that function, it's going to get the results, and of course now it's going to pass it down the pipe here back up to our populate result just up here. Let's save this and refresh, and we can type out DOM, and now we get here your results. We get an empty array. Let's figure out why. Let's try again. So response data is not a function. What did I do wrong here? Response parser, result parser. Okay, so this needs to be a response parser. My mistake, guys. I apologize. Let's go back inside here and check this out. So yeah, response parser as the property. Let's try again and refresh. Type in DOM. And now we get here your results, the array of results. Okay, let's purposely test the error handling by simply just throwing this error right here every time. We should now hop down here and return an empty array. Let's try this out. DOM throws the error, and we get here our empty array. So it's working perfectly fine. Let's remove that line right there. So that is all for the fetch request, and probably the most important part of this video. Okay, let's move on now to finishing off the populate results function. Now I do want to do one more thing before we continue, and that is to basically say whenever we focus on the input field, want to be able to show the results container. When we lose focus, want to be able to hide the results container. So let's go inside here, inside the add listeners, and we're going to be saying we can say this.elements.input.add event listener. We're going to listen for the focus event. So basically when the user clicks onto the input field, we're going to run this function inside here, and we can simply just say this.elements.results container, we can say class list.add, and we can add the class of instant search results container dash dash visible, just like that. Okay, and do the exact same thing for the blur event. So blur fires off whenever the user loses focus on the input field or clicks away. So on blur, we can remove that visible class. Okay, so now let's go in the index.html and just uncomment our 2 lines here to actually see something tangible. Okay, let's save this and refresh the page, and then gain focus on the input field, and we get right there the results container appearing perfectly fine. So that is what that code just did. Now it might be a good time to just remove our HTML for the results container, seeing that the last thing to do is to actually generate our results. Okay, so let's get rid of that, and now head back inside the JavaScript. Okay, and then scroll down to the populate results method. So here, let's implement this method. Okay, so firstly, it's going to be removing all of the existing results if there were to be any. So we can say right here, clear all existing results. Okay, and this will be while this.elements.resultsContainer.firstChild. So basically, while there is a result in the results container, we can say this.elements.resultsContainer.removeChild, we're going to be removing the first child. So we can say elements results container.firstChild right there, and that of course is going to clear the HTML. Okay, we can also say here, now we can actually populate each one of our results. So we can say update list of results under the search bar. Okay, and now we can say for const results of the results in which we pass in. For each result, we can say this.elements.resultsContainer.appendChild. We're going to be appending a new element, which we're going to be creating through the JavaScript, and this is going to be a call to this.createResultsElement, passing through here our result. So now let's implement this method right here to actually create an instance of an element to represent one of our results, this anchor tag right there. Okay, so let's go inside here and create this result element method. So we can say right here, create result element. This will take through a results object. Okay, and I'll copy and paste my documentation for this particular method. We can say here, creates the HTML to represent a single result in a list of results. Okay, so here we can make a new element. We can say const anchor element is equal to document.createElement, and pass through here an anchor tag or an A tag. Okay, we can also say here anchor element.classList.add. We can add the instant-search __ result class, and also we can say anchor elements.insert adjacent HTML, and basically this allows you to insert an HTML string inside the actual element. So we can say here position as after begin, that way it gets inserted inside the actual element itself. Okay, and we can say here for the HTML string, we're going to be saying this.options.template function and passing through the results. Okay, so this template function call of course refers to this one right here. So let's go ahead now and pass through our results. Of course right here result refers to first name, last name, occupation, etc. And here we can return the HTML as the string to represent a result. Okay, so let's use ES6 template strings here by using the actual backtick character right there. And we can say here multi-line string of HTML. So we can say div with a class of instant-search __ title. Inside here, pass through the first and last name of the user. So we can say $ and curly braces. results.firstname, then a space, and then just say results.lastname. Okay, we can also say down here a new paragraph tag with a class of instant-search __ paragraph. Inside here, we can put the person's occupation, results.occupation. Okay, cool. So now we've got this HTML being returned from this template function. Once again, the reason why it's here is because they want this search bar to be generic and customizable no matter what the endpoint is about. Okay, cool. Let's go back inside here now, inside the create result element method, and finish it off. So we can say here we need to add the actual href attribute for the link to go through a new page. So we can say here, if provided, add a link for the result. So we can just say if href in result. So basically, if you provide the href in your result right here, then let's go back. Then we can just say element.set attribute. Sorry, anchor element.set attribute. I'm going to set the href attribute for the value of results.href. Okay, and then lastly, we can return the HTML element. Okay, now I did forget to add some documentation here, so I can just say @returns and pass through here HTML anchor element. Okay, beautiful. So now we are basically done with the instant search bar, I believe. So let's just save this and refresh the page and see if it actually works. So let's type out DOM right here, and it is not working. Let's figure out why. Let's go back inside here. Here we go. So anchor element as my constant name. Let's try it again. Refresh and type out DOM. And we get right there our list of instant search results. And also we can see on the bottom right of the page, just down here, our links are working fine. Let's attempt to click on it and we go to the destination of the actual href. Okay, so that is it for our instant search bar using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.